Okay, welcome to the two of you that have arrived here for this impromptu discussion and those who will then be watching the later broadcast. I am again Derrick Zane. This is yet again me under ye old learning tree. I'm going to try and explain some things as best as I can to help give you a better foundation on what you're trying to do. So last month, we discussed psychology and how it forms the basis of everything we do. And in many ways, that is the oldest element of professional wrestling in the form that we know it as. The promo, or the promotion, the art of talking, is the newest element. This is something that really only just got started, really, I would say late 60s, 70s, when it started being televised and they made a point to actually interview the wrestlers. And weirdly enough, what is the newest element of the business has in many ways become the most important aspect of that business. And the reason why is it used to be that you could just garner interest in what was going on through your physical ability. And that was back when wrestling was seen as legitimate combat sport and before boxing took its place. And when it had to travel on, the circuit route as part of the circus sideshow, the circus was itself the attraction that brought you to it. And then you would see the wrestling sideshow, and that was something you would go to watch, but it was a part of the circus itself. It wasn't the main attraction. When wrestling split away from the sideshow and became its own entity, attempting to be on par with boxing, it realized, the people involved realized they had to really kind of hammer home the spectacle and really grab the attention of the viewer and pull them in. Because again, everything is dependent upon asses in seats, paying ticket prices at the door, and later buying merch. That is where the money is made. And to do that, you had to encourage people to take interest in what you were doing. And that is why you can find wrestlers who are miserable, just miserable at the work. Awful. They cannot really work a clean headlock, wrist lock, throw a good punch. But because they're charismatic and because they can talk, they are given pushes because their ability to draw your attention to what's going on will go beyond them. They will get you into the building to then watch people who can actually work. And because they drew your interest, you still paid that money and you're still sitting your ass in that seat. And that is why the promo is so important. So how do we cut a promo? Well, there are many ways. If you're cutting a face promo, it is vital to remember that everything you are saying is meant to be external. You are cutting a promo because you are the face, you are the mouthpiece of the audience itself. You are the thing that they are looking at in attempting to kind of put themselves into. You are the avatar of the fan. So when you're cutting a promo talking about how you wanna win the belt, it's not that you just want to win the belt for yourself or your own monetary gain or what have you. You want to win that belt because it is a symbol of excellence and that you are trying to be an example to young people everywhere, or you're doing this for the family back home, or you're doing this for whatever kind of feel-goody, nonsensical BS you want to say it is. But the point is, you're doing it for somebody else. You're doing it for the crowd so they can live vicariously through you. If you're cutting a promo as a heel, everything is internal. You don't care about the crowd. You don't care about anybody else in the business. It's all about you, and you are winning this belt because you deserve to carry it. Nobody else deserves to carry it. You're the best guy around or gal around or in between, and nobody else is going to say different because you're holding that gold because you are it, baby, and there ain't nobody else. And so that is a difficult line to walk. And again, I reject the notion that there's anything in between. You're either good or you're bad. If they're cheering you when you're bad, you're either an overhill or you're doing something wrong. They shouldn't be cheering you. Again, that goes back to psychology. Now, I understand that for some people, speaking is difficult. It can be terrifying. It is a legitimate phobia. The fear of public speaking is right up there with the fear of water, the fear of animals, spiders, needles, what have you. It is a legitimate fear, and it should be respected that some people just cannot do it because that fear is so overwhelming that they just shut down. So if you've got somebody on your roster who just cannot or refuses to do a promo, cut them some slack. It's not a personal thing. It's not a slight on you as a promoter or you as a manager of a promotion. It's just human nature. And unless you can find a way to get past a phobia, you're just going to have to learn to live with it. Now, does that mean there is no other options for somebody who can't cut a live promo? Of course not. They can always pre-type something and just post it in local chat. Or you can encourage people to perform as managers. Now, the managerial position is not just there to look pretty or just occasionally interfere in a match. The real point of the manager is to talk for those who cannot talk. That is why guys like Bobby Heenan were so very important in the industry. The ability to speak, but maybe not having the ability to look like you're dangerous, is vital in this industry, and it's been lost in many ways because McMahon, who is the guy who led the major industry that we base a lot of what we're doing off of, didn't really see a point of having managers in this modern era. And I honestly think that is a mistake he made. Managers are still vitally important because, again, speaking is important. And if the performer doesn't have the chops to speak, you need someone to talk for them. Now, if you're cutting a promo as a manager, it's not internal, it's not external, it's a different little variation. If you're a heel manager, what you're trying to do is not draw the heat to you just for you. You're trying to get all that heat from the crowd so you can then put it on the guy that you're representing. Again, like what Heenan did with the Heenan family. He got you mad at him, but he got you mad at him so he could then talk about how great Rick Rude was, or Big Boss Man when Big Boss Man was heel, or whomever he was representing, or Andre the Giant, right? The point was to get you mad at him so then he could say, wow, you're not mad at me. You're mad at this guy that I represent because he's just better than the guy you want to cheer for. So, now I'm mad at him. You're playing with emotions. That is why the promo matters. You are attempting to make an emotional connection to the crowd. So, you will fall into pitfalls trying to do that. One of the big pitfalls is the flame war. I'm just going to borrow you for a minute here, Licardi, since you're here. If I were cutting a promo with Licardi and I wasn't paying attention to the pitfalls and I just kept slagging Licardi in a feud, talking about, look, Licardi, it is absolutely an insult that they would have a piece of trash like you try to compete with Derrick Zane. Why, there's no chance in hell you could ever beat me. I'll just walk a mile over you left, right, and center, and then scrape you off the bottom of my boots, and that'll be all said and done. Okay, that feels like it pumps you up because, you're getting yourself up and over at the expense of the opponent. But there's a problem with that. What happens if you're booked to lose? What have you just established about yourself after completely running down your opponent as being irrelevant and meaningless? If they then beat you, what does that make you? Pitfall. Better than, I would say, to talk about how strong you are, but in the context of how that is mirrored against your opponent. Luke Hardy, it is without doubt that you are a man of skill and strength. And it can be said that at any moment, at any time, you've got a better than even chance of pinning Derrick Zane's shoulders to the mat 1, 2, and 3. But remember this, Derrick Zane got here where he is right here and now because he is not a man to be taken lightly. Derrick Zane is damn well knowing that you are dangerous, but Derrick Zane, he is a danger the likes you have never experienced before. And by the end of this match, you are never gonna forget it. Now that should be more encouraging to an audience to kind of come and want to watch and see, because hey, even chances, something could happen. This guy could win, that guy could win. But I want to see it. I mean, I want to get invested into what the hell is going on. So if you can, avoid the pitfall words of bitch, you suck, you're trash, you can't compete with me. Try to avoid those things if you can, because it's easy. It'll get you heat. It'll get you a pop. But again, there will be consequences if the story is meant to go a certain way and you have painted it in another direction. When you cut your promos, this is going to come down ultimately, and I think we may address this in question time, but this is going to really come down to the question of what you are most comfortable in doing. I do what is referred to as the stream of consciousness form of promo work. I don't really think about, well, that's not true. I have ideas in my head about what I want to say, but I'm not actively thinking about what I'm saying. It just kind of comes out, which I don't recommend for everybody because I don't know where it's going to go and I can get tripped up easily. I can sometimes drift off because what am I saying? Oh yeah, I'm back to here. Boom, 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 boom. But in my ear, it sounds a little better because I'm less locked into certain angles. I can kind of wiggle here and there and everywhere. But again, there's a danger in that you can really just drift off into the tall weeds and miss the point of what you're trying to get across. For most people, write out what you want to say and then read that in a note card as you're cutting your promo. The danger of that, first of all, talk about what's good about that. What's good about that is that you've got your ideas locked down and you are staying focused and you are on point. The problem with that is that it sounds like you're locked in, you're staying focused, and you're on point, and it sounds like you're reading. If you can read it without sounding like you're reading it, fucking yes, that is the way to go. But it is dangerous because many times a promo just sounds like you're reading off a note. Here I am Malice the Violent Machine. Sorry, I'm not deliberately saying that this is you, Malice. I'm just using you as an example. I am Malice the Machine, and I'm here to tell you all that I'm here to win today because I am the strongest man in this ring at this. If you get that kind of droning sound, it becomes obvious that you're reading off a card. This is where the acting aspect of this business comes in. Hence why it's become one of the most important elements of the industry because of television. Because you're on a visible medium being ingested by the masses. Inflection. If you're gonna cut a promo and you're angry, sound like you're angry. If you're cutting a promo and you're meant to be sad, sound like you're sad. Sound like something happened in your life. You have lost something important. If you're trying to be, making a humorous point, hey, come on, you can have fun with it. Voice acting is not expected to be perfect, but you should at least try to get, something, some kind of spice. Get something into what you're saying so that people can grab onto the emotional connections. Again, the danger of pre-writing everything, though, is that if you're working with somebody that freeforms it, they might hit you with a zig when you're expecting a zag. So, again, you're just going to have to play it by ear. You're going to have to work with what, really works with you best, and just knock on wood and hope for the best, because this is an art. And as an art, there's no science to it. There's no one perfect way to do it. There's no template. You're just going to have to do the best that you can and keep working to improve. And I wish with all my soul, I wish that there was another answer I could give to that, but there just isn't. And a lot of guys in this, like I said, a lot of guys in this industry, men and women, who really have no business being in the business because they just suck at working in the ring. They're either uncoordinated or they're just not safe or what have you, but they get over because they can talk. And at the end of the day, money walks and money follows charisma. And that's just the reality of it. I was really hoping that there was more I could say on that matter, but it kind of boils down to that. You're just going to have to really play with how you talk. Get a copy of oh damn it, what is it? The recording software. It'll come to me. It's not have a star. Dang it. This is awful. What the hell am I thinking of? Recording software. Audible. Yes, thank you, Paul. Audible. Get a copy of Audible. You can get the quick, dirty one for free. It gives you like 30 seconds, and just practice talking in emotions and then hearing yourself back. That is usually a pretty good way that you can work to develop your emotional output and skill. And just be honest with yourself. Be honest with how you sound, be honest with how you're progressing, and always work to improve. Now, I'm going to give you some suggestions of people to watch for promos. Some of these are going to be obvious. Some you may not know about, depending entirely on what you've watched or how deeply you've watched this industry. The Dusty Rhodes Hard Times promo. Classic, has to be watched. Any promo by Jake Roberts, Jake the Snake. And I don't just mean his stuff in WWF. I mean even way back earlier when he was doing stuff down south. Really a good one is Steve Austin's when he first went to ECW. Especially when he was explaining his first arrival. Not the one where he's talking to Joey Styles, but his introduction one. Yeah, the Mick Foley Kane Dewey promo. Ricky Steamboat was a good promo, especially the stuff that he was doing with Ric Flair. Ric Flair promos, any Ric Flair promo, especially if you want to be a gimmick or a character who is flamboyantly cocky. Any Ric Flair, like late 70s, early 80s promo when he was world's champ through Crockett and the NWA. Absolute fire. Harley Race. Now, Harley Race was not known for being charismatic, but if you want to be seen as legit, you listen to Harley talk and you listen to how he talks. Terry Funk. Terry was a bit of a madman, but if you listen to a Terry Funk promo, especially when he was working with Dusty down in Florida, those promos, absolutely beautiful. So again, there's all kinds of stuff out there. Go and watch. Yeah, the Punk Pipe Bomb is not bad. I also suggest Piper. Now, I don't always suggest Piper and the WWF, even though those were fun. If you can find his stuff in Portland, go watch his promos in Portland, especially when him and Rick Martel were a tag team against the Sheepherders, who you may know better as the Bushwhackers. Originally, they were New Zealanders, and they were way more violent and like disturbing. Then they went to the Fed and became like cutesy Australians who did like a funny stomp walk. Go watch them, like their old 70s stuff. They're horrifying. Like Abdullah the Butcher levels of horrifying. Let's see, who else is good? Oh yeah, promo. Okay, so I was talking about the art of being a manager and doing promo. Obviously, Bobby Heenan, no doubt. But also look into Captain Lou Albano. And look into, this is going to be a wild one, but hopefully people can find it. A guy called Skandar Akbar. For any of you old heads, you know who that is. Yep. The Wizard, the Grand Wizard of Wrestling. Here's another good one. The Reverend Slick. There are any number of these guys out there, and especially the stuff before they went to the Fed. Because everybody generally knows these people because Vince bought up their contracts and brought them to Fed to kill the territories. But if you get a chance, watch a lot of their work back in the territorial system. If I tell you Paul Bearer, that's one thing. But if I tell you to look into Percival Pringle III, that's something else. And again, old heads know that. And you will see, yep, Paul Jones was also good. So like I said, there are so many opportunities for you out there to just grab onto knowledge and absorb. You don't have to speak exactly like them, but you can take examples from and really boost your game, improve how you do what you do. I wanted to think that there was going to be more to talk about, but honestly, it's really it. We got about a little over a half hour left and only 2 people here. Hopefully you guys got a lot of questions. Otherwise, we're going to cut it short. But go ahead. If you got questions, go ahead and throw them out. Well, my fan makes noise over my mic because it is warm today in Southern California. I'll go ahead and mute my mic while people are thinking of questions, hopefully. Okay, so Aziza asks, how do you know when you've maybe gone too far in a promo against your opponent? Ooh, that's a tough one because again, there's no template for cutting promos. Ideally, you want to encourage the audience to come see you both. Because remember, a wrestling match ultimately is a dance between 2 to 4 people, or if you get really complicated into the big things. But ultimately, it's between 2 people that are trying to convince a crowd that what they're seeing is something that it isn't. That's really what wrestling is. So it shouldn't be about, you getting the last word on your opponent. It should really be about the two of you convincing everybody to buy into what you're doing. So again, when I mentioned how you can fall into pitfalls, I think that is where you start to stumble into danger. Try not to run them down. Acknowledge their strengths, but suggest that perhaps your strengths are just that much better. So that way it doesn't feel like there's no emphasis or no reason to come and see you because wow, this person is so impressive. They're just clearly going to beat the crap out of that guy. So I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. Why should I care? Build tension would be my suggestion there. And how do you know? I guess if people just tune out, if they don't care, if they don't want to come see, I guess it comes down to the individual's like perspective. And if you feel like an ick, if you cut a promo and you feel icky after cutting it, then maybe that's a clue that yeah, you maybe shouldn't do that. You'll have to, like I said, play it by ear, kind of mix and match, and then see how things work out. Just again, my suggestion: try to build each other up so that people are going to be invested in wanting to see what you're going to do. Yeah, hopefully there's more questions. Otherwise, this it's going to be a very boring half hour of silence. I guess I could sing show tunes or something. Questions, comments, concerns, diatribes, speeches, anything? Yeah. Anything? Yeah. Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? 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 Hmm. Okay, so Aziza asks again, if somebody wants to drag the family, wife, husband, kids into the promo, do you get the opponent's permission to do so? Yes, clearly. That is without question. If you're going to start getting into family issues, that needs the expressed permission of the person you're talking about because that is a line. If they're okay with it, then sure. But I would say work with the person that you're cutting the promo against to know where the lines are. because eesh, like I personally really wouldn't like drag him in. Like if you are going to drag in the family, say nice things, unless like I said again, it's agreed to. Because oof, oh boy, that can that would create some bad juju. So try to avoid that if you can. But thank you for asking that. That's a bold question, and it requires a serious answer. Yes, you better get permission because otherwise people won't want to work with you, especially kids. You oof, no, no good comes out of that. Malice, clearly you've got to have a question. Come on, you got to have a question for me, man. Even if it's nothing more, try it than like what did you have for breakfast? Something. I'm guessing maybe Malice isn't actually at his computer. Oh boy. Any other questions you got there, Aziza? Doesn't have to be promo related. If you've got any other questions about pro wrestling in Second Life or in general that you think would help you improve as a performer, ask away. I can't guarantee they'll be the right answer, but they can be an answer at least that's going to give you some different perspective. Oh, okay. The question from Aziza is, how do you pick your entrance music? But whatever you like. Entrance music is tricky because if we're going to air videos on YouTube, there's always the risk of the copyright strike. So if you can find music that is palatable to be aired without somebody deciding that somehow you owe them money, that's a good way to go. But really, it just comes down to what your personal tastes are and what you think personally would reflect the character. But there's no like one single way. Yeah, as Paul mentions here, AI is getting better with making music for entrances. Christian Casanova has made an alt called Sly Norris, and his entrance music was made with AI. And let me just tell you, absolute just perfection. Generally so. If you can get permission written, then you're good. At least that's how it works in the real side of the business. If, in the case of CM Punk, he uses famously the song "The Cult of Personality" by Living Color. Now, recently, the band redid "Cult of Personality," which is why it sounds different now than when he originally came out, because it's two different recordings of the song. And the second one they made specifically for him to be able to use without having to pay, I think it's EMI, X amount of money for every time it's used. So royalty rights are tricky, and that's legal stuff. And I can tell you, lawyers are scary people to deal with. So if you can find a way to not have to deal with them, even better. Oh, okay. You've worked in the music industry. Then you are well aware. There are many, many souls that are quite litigious when it comes to music rights and whom has them. But yeah, if as Paul suggested, if you can find a way to utilize AI to make your own music, I guess technically, depending on the terms of service of whatever system you're using, you then own your own song. Um, that creates a whole other philosophical discussion on whether real music is better than generated music, but I'm not going to get into that discussion. That's for an entirely other day and people way smarter than I am. Fair point. For those of you watching at home, Aziza made the comment that music is a personal choice, which it is. I absolutely agree with that. And that AI sometimes is so good that you can't even tell it's been AI. And that is the trick. Any other questions you got about the industry, either real side or SL side? Ask away. Any questions you got? I only just kind of pick subjects to discuss so that it isn't the same thing every time, and then kind of touch on a broad number of things. Thank you. That's very kind of you. But me just rambling is not is not conducive to what we're trying to do here. I must have questions so I can focus my nonsense into a direct point. Ziza asks the question, do you think that the WWE will give Ron Killings a title shot so he can retire? They better. Look, the man was not just the first black NWA world champion, though some could argue that that was Dusty Rhodes. But that's again a philosophical question, like debate. I think the man is worthy of carrying a title. He clearly has physical ability, and he can talk, and he's charismatic. Selecting champions is tricky, regardless of what level you're at. In the indies, a lot of times it gets put on somebody that the promoter trusts is going to keep showing up and won't just leave with their belt that they paid a couple $100 for. That could, in all honesty, kill that company. Like when you're in the indies, every cent counts. When you get into the more expensive stuff where you're on like television, then you got a little more money to play with. And so your options are more based around who is drawing money and, merchandising sales. When people, especially young men, like 20 something guys bitch about John Cena being champ, they're completely ignoring the fact that John Cena, A, drove ticket sales, and B, drove merchandising. And C, whether you like the man or not, I personally kind of think he's a pretty cool guy. He did more Make-A-Wish appearances than anybody. And I mean in any sport. So that alone, you put that belt on John Cena. But he doesn't always have to have it. So yeah, I think they should, but that is not a decision that anybody there gives a shit that I have or not. There are decisions being made in those rooms that we won't be party to. But should he? Yes. Will he? Hopefully. We will see. But yes, you put the belt on the truth, goddammit, because he's a truth. Malice, are you back? You back, Malice? You got questions? Ask me a question, Malice. Ask me a question, or I'm going to make fun of you in your weird red jumpsuit. Any other questions? Comments? Concerns? Soliloquies? Haiku? Anything? Anybody? Yeah, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Call me Ishmael. Just stand here and recite the openings to like various classic works of literature. Oh, okay. Aziza asks, when one star leaves a company and is well known by a certain name, then leaves that company to go to another company, they always want to change that wrestler's name to something new. Why do they do that? Well, in that particular case, it's because when they were typically at WWE, it's because they were trademarked through WWE. And yeah, so that's why in certain cases, very certain cases, some people were able to make a big enough name for themselves in other places that they were brought over as themselves, and they were thus able to retain their identity. But it isn't always the case. So, hence why Mariah May to Blake Monroe. It's because most likely the Fed gave her that that persona and trademarked it because it's, again, money. It's all about money, money, money. Yeah. Hence the infamously bad decision to create new Razor Ramon and new Diesel when Scott Hall and Kevin Nash went to WCW. You know, technically, the Fed owned the names Razor Ramon and Diesel, so they created new ones, and that went over like a fart in church. But yeah, it's money. It always 99.9% of the time, if you got a question about the business, the answer is probably going to default to money in some way or another. Yeah, yeah, pretty much. It is a business. There's a Tio. For those of you who don't know, I have a dog. I have two dogs. Both are rescues, and one of them is Tio, and he is currently up on my bed. Hey, don't sniff there. Gentlemen, don't sniff there. All right. Any other questions? No, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the people on the screen here. Yes, you're very cute. You are an adorable little guy. All right, we got 10 more minutes before I'm going to send you both because, thank you, Paul, for being here. But, Paul agreed to be here for this excitement of me standing here talking to, nothing. So he knew the risks, but you and Malice, who apparently has just dropped off the face of the earth. So I don't know. Do we have any other questions there, Aziza? Okay. She is done. Well, last chance. Malice, are you there? Are you there, Malice? With your red jumper and your red track pants where your thighs sticking out the inside, can you not work out your Jesus Christ, man? How have you been in Second Life this long and you still don't know how to work your alphas? All right. Let's give him 2 more minutes to maybe come back and come up with a question, and then I'll just do the parting quotes, and we'll put a wrap on it, and then hope that more people show up next month. I'll have to think of another topic. Maybe just do a thing where you just write to me what your questions are, and then I'll just do that. I'll just talk to Paul for half an hour about a subject and then answer questions at the end. Maybe that's what we'll do instead of doing it live. Fuck it. We won't do it live. We won't do it live. Guessing Malice is not there. All right. So we'll go ahead and kill it here. Again, I've been Derrick Zane. This has been Learning Tree. We have been discussing the subject of the promo and why it's important. Why it's important? Because it is the emotional connection that you need to make to the audience for them to care enough to come and see you in the first place. Is there a set in stone way to do it. Of course not. Nothing in this industry is set in stone. It can always be manipulated and changed and modified to fit what you need. But always start with the foundation first. And with that, that's pretty much all I got to say on the subject. I'm going to say very much a big thank you to Aziza for coming out and listening and being involved with questions. Sort of going to say thank you to Malice, but he's not really there with his legs sticking through his pants. Dirty, dirty boy. Eventually, you'll probably watch this back and realize how much of a goof I'm making you look like, though nobody can see you, so take solace in that. And of course, thank you to Paul, who is filming this. I'm sure there have been way more interesting things he could be doing with his time, but thank you nonetheless. So we'll call it here. And again, I'll think of something for next month, and hopefully more people show up and actually have questions that I can answer, other than Aziza, because at some point she's going to start learning way more about me than she really wants. All right. Derrick Zane, and I don't know, class dismissed, or we're done. Get out of here, whatever. Have a good one. Catch y'all later.